Welcome back to the Stretch the Floor podcast. I'm Matthew, and I'm here as always with Venushan. And it is one of the most exciting seasons within the season of an NBA season. We're less than a week away from the trade deadline. We already did an episode last week, kind of just breaking down every player that was in the rumors, every trade that was a player, a buyer, a seller, whatever. We've had a couple of trades since then, so we're going to break down those. And we have kind of made a bunch of trades of our own, playing around with the trade machine, trades that we think and that a lot of fans in the community think need to happen at the deadline. They're just really excited and kind of make too much sense. So before we get into those, let's talk about what actually did happen. The biggest one being PJ Tucker on his way to Milwaukee, and which is actually a good move for them. But I mean, what they gave up is kind of crazy.
Well, when on the surface level, when you look at it, it is crazy. But when you see the breakdowns, I get more in favor of the Bucks side of it.
Really? Well, okay, so just to say the whole trade, so they PJ Tucker and Rodion Kurucs on their way to Milwaukee from Houston for two DJs, DJ Wilson and DJ Augustine. Milwaukee traded their unprotected 2023 first. They got back their own 2022, and there was a pick swap, so they get Houston's second rounder this year, giving up their first round this year, which I mean is not that big of a difference. The end of the first round versus the beginning of the second round, so it's not that big of a deal. But I mean, they basically gave up a first for PJ Tucker, an unprotected 2023 first for PJ Tucker.
Yeah, but they also get their 2022 back, so it's kind of just they kind of just get one more year. The Rockets for the Bucks to get worse and worse, for Drew Holiday to start digressing, for Brook Lopez to start getting worse, for maybe a Chris Middleton injury or something like that. They basically move up, like 7 or 8 slots in this year's draft from their second to the Bucks first.
Yeah.
8, 9 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And those seconds honestly might be more valuable because it's an unguaranteed contract versus a guaranteed contract. You could work them out longer and stuff like that. So that's kind of a wash. The picks are kind of a wash, in my opinion. I really don't find them that important. I think it's a good team trade for both because it's obviously a more appealing set of assets for the Rockets, but it's the same total amount of assets that they still had. Like they didn't gain an asset. It's just they have more appealing assets now. So it's a win-win situation, in my opinion.
I mean, so they got their own next year's first round, and they gave up their first round from 2 years down the road. The further down the road for a good team a pick is, the more valuable it is because like they're obviously going to be pretty good next year. But yeah, I guess it is more of a wash than we initially thought. I mean, as for the actual trade itself, PJ Tucker I think kind of fits in perfectly on Milwaukee. Like, I think he's probably going to be one of their 5 best players on the floor in like big game situations in the playoffs. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, when closing situations, you'd much rather have PJ Tucker on the court than a Bobby Portis or Brook Lopez. So you're going to see a closing lineup of Drew, Dante DiVincenzo, Chris Middleton, PJ Tucker, Giannis. And if DiVincenzo isn't hitting his threes, which we have seen a couple times, then Chris Middleton's going to move to the 2, PJ Tucker's going to move to the 3, Giannis is going to stay at the 5, and Bobby Portis going to come in at the 4/5. So now you just have 3 lineups to close. If you have a big lineup, you have Brook Lopez in instead of PJ Tucker. If DiVincenzo's hitting his threes, you could do that lineup, which is, I think, the only lineup which really has a potential to win the whole championship. And if DiVincenzo sadly is not hitting his threes and you still have to go small ball, you still have Bobby Portis. But PJ Tucker's in 2 out of 3 of those closing lineups. He's going to have a huge impact. And he's just the best wing guard, like, to throw on those, like, KDs and everyone. And even now when you look at their matchup with the Nets, because the East runs through the Nets, you're going to have Drew Holiday on James Harden, which I don't think it's going to happen anymore. I think going to move Drew Holiday onto Kyrie Irving, have PJ Tucker on James Harden, and have Giannis on KD. And they're not the worst set of 3 defenders. I think they're up there with, I think they're the second best set of 3 defenders to guard the big 3 other than the Clippers. So the building for the Nets, it's going to be a great finals, Eastern Conference Finals if it does happen.
Yeah.
But he is 36, so we don't know how mobile he's going to be still, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see.
I think I would throw Miami in there for teams that can guard the big three the best. But yeah, I mean, this just lets them be more switchable. PJ Tucker is going to fit right at home shooting corner threes. He's not going to have to really learn anything too crazy. He's coming from that James Harden Houston system to Milwaukee. He's not going to have to play five, which is nice for him. He's going to be able to guard the wing player, the perimeter players, like you said. I think it's perfect. He's going to be a better option than he's a better shooter than both Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis. He's a better pound for pound defender than both of them. Their best lineup is Giannis at the five. That's always been their best lineup. And this is basically just going to let them unleash that lineup even more, which is going to be really fun to see.
Yeah, and this also gives them a switching opportunity too. Like if you have a 1-4 switch, like let's say a Ben Simmons, Embiid pick and roll, you could have PJ Tucker on Ben Simmons and Giannis on Embiid, and you could switch that for like a little bit. Obviously, PJ Tucker is still probably going to struggle with Embiid, but he's one of the better small defenders. So, man, their defense just got a lot better.
Yeah, they get better defensively. They just get another guy who's not going to demand the ball. He's actually going to he's hit shots in playoff settings, in Western Conference Final settings. Really good on paper for them. I mean, he is 36, but I mean, you're not asking him to do too much. He's going to be guarding probably the best wing player, shooting a few corner threes a game. I don't know. I still think he has a lot left in the tank. I think he can really help this team.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So the only other trade that happened was actually kind of important, as we're going to get into a little bit later. But Miami acquired Trevor Ariza in exchange for basically just straight up Myers Leonard. I think there was a 2027 second rounder in there somewhere, but basically Myers Leonard for Trevor Ariza. So Miami gets another switchy wing defender who can shoot some threes. Kind of just throw that onto their pile of a bunch of guys who can do that.
Yeah, and they get rid of someone who was injured and not able to play this season. So they're basically getting an extra body. And now Mo Harkless, Iguodala, E.B. Bradley, guys like that are all available to get traded.
Exactly.
And honestly, Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson, maybe one of those two go as well. So I expect Miami to make a big move. And this was kind of just the first domino for their trade season, because they made a lot of moves last season at the trade deadline, which got them to the finals. And then sadly, Jay Crowder left, didn't want to resign because he wanted that long-term stability. And they're still kind of looking for that extra player to go out there with Bam, with Dragic, with Tahiro, with Butler, and just kind of get the ball rolling. And I think they're going to make a big move. The rumors are Kyle Lowry, but the Raptors have completely abolished that rumor, saying they're not trading him. So one team wants him really badly, one team says they're not trading him. So we really don't have any insight on that because it's conflicting reports. Yeah, so we don't know who they're going to go for. Victor Oladipo seems like he's like the Houston Rockets are overvaluing him. So we don't know if that's going to happen. So it's kind of just a mystery what Miami's going to do.
Yeah, like you said, this getting Trevor Ariza makes a guy like Bradley or Iguodala, Harkless. These guys are expendable now. They all are just nice pieces you can throw in to make salaries match, whatever. Nice veteran players. You mentioned Kyle Lowry. Now, the Raptors have come out and said we are not trading Kyle Lowry. I just wonder how much of that has to do with John Collins and Porzingis being pretty much taken off the market. Porzingis by Mark Cuban and John Collins by, I guess, the Hawks asking price being too high. And the win streak that the Hawks are on with their new coach, with Nate McMillan. This seems like the Raptors organization saying, no, we were never going to trade Kyle Lowry. You know, like, you fans don't have to worry. He's our franchise guy. But, I mean, if Collins or Porzingis was there, I'm pretty confident that they would have made that trade.
Yeah, with the two big centers kind of being off the books and Miles Turner, kind of the Pacers are not engaging in trade talks for him as well. So all the centers, which kind of fit the Raptors timeline and the Raptors play style not being available, they're kind of just like, hey, we're just going to make small trades here or there, but we're not going to make anything big. It's understandable. For the Hawks' point of view, John Collins, yes, you have to resign him probably for a max now, but you're on an 8-game winning streak with a new coach, so you really can't trade this because you don't want to mess anything up, and you have a playoff opportunity, and most likely your first playoff berth since Trae Young.
Yeah,
so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, makes sense for the Hawks. I mean, when they first said that they were looking to move Collins, I don't think either of us understood why.
Yeah,
We knew this team was one of the most talented teams, or one of the more upgraded teams in the East that had a chance at a playoff spot.
yeah,
Gallinari was injured. He's back and he's playing well. They're coming together as a team. They're on a win streak. They have a chance to be a top 5 seed, even like in the East. So it doesn't make sense to move Collins right now. And yeah, so that's I think why Kyle Lowry has kind of been taken out of the rumors. But I mean, Miami has come out and said just today that they are aggressively after him. So let's see if they throw in like 2 firsts or 3 firsts or something. I don't know.
or maybe they know first and they just throw in Tyler Hero.
Yeah, yeah.
You never know,
Tyler Hero
right?
gets it done. Tyler Hero definitely gets it done.
By himself gets it done. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so let's get into the actual trades that we have kind of constructed here. Well, I think let's start off with this one. This is my favorite one. So we all know the Celtics need to make a move, and they need to get some more guys outside of their top players that can kind of just make things happen and not just stand in the corner and kind of just take up space. So this trade is the Celtics are trading Campbell Walker to the New Orleans Pelicans for the 2 guards in the rumors, 2 of the 3 guards in the rumors, JJ Redick, Eric Bledsoe, and a first round pick, which comes from the Lakers.
Yeah. So if a trade like this happens, it would be signaling that another big trade's going to happen for the Celtics because I don't see them just getting rid of Kemba for pieces unless another star is coming in, being the trade exception. But this is a very realistic trade. Like they switch up the cap, they get more veterans to come deep deep in their roster. They get someone like JJ Redick who's just going to fit their system so easily and so nicely. Just someone who comes off pick and roll screens, someone who creates so
So
much
good.
off ball action. Uh, they get a late first in that 2021 Lakers, which sweetens the pot, kind of gets this thing moving. And then they get Eric Bledsoe, someone who's an all NBA level defender, who's going to, with Marcus Smart, they're going to be a terror for backcourts everywhere. He's not the greatest shooter, but he has his moments. And if he's able to play make a little bit and shoot a little bit, he could just be a better defensive Campbell Walker. And from the Pelican side of point, 1 year is already gone. So it's 3 years, 34 million left on, uh, 3 years, 34 million per left on Kemba's deal. You take a risk on him and he's just a scorer that could just give you a different type of view to your roster. Because when you have Lonzo and him now, it's Lonzo, you're the point guard,
Mm-hmm.
you're the shooting guard, and roles just become a lot more clear.
Yeah, and he's like the perfect type of guy to play off of Zion. That's kind of what they're trying to do with like giving Nikhil Alexander Walker all these minutes, a guy who can like create a shot for himself off the dribble, make some threes, just kind of be like a 3-level scorer. And Kemba's the perfect example of that when healthy.
Yeah.
Can you imagine like Zion just collapsing the defense with Ingram and Kemba there, both to just create shots and make shots? That'd be insane with defenders like Steven Adams and Lonzo Ball if they decide to keep those two. I think that would be kind of the perfect trade for them if he were healthy. So, like you said, you take a risk, you move on from Eric Bledsoe, who has like 17 million coming to him. You just move off that contract. You get Kemba, which is definitely a more upside contract, I think. And like you said, this for the Celtics, this would be kind of perfect because I mean, you can take that if you do decide to go after like a Vucevic, for example, the exception.
Yeah.
Maybe you just send that Lakers pick right to Orlando, some other assets like Neesmith or something, whatever, sweeten the pot. You get Vucevic, and you can have a 5 of Vucevic, Tatum, Brown, Eric Bledsoe,
Smart.
and Marcus Smart. That's an amazing lineup on offense and defense, and I think that'd be really good.
Yeah. And basically Vucevic is the guy. Like this
Yeah,
trade with Vucevic makes so much sense. But this trade without Vucevic, I just can't see them doing this because it kind of just lowers their like max potential. Because when Kemba's on and he's fully healthy, they're going crazy, and you have like 3 20-point scorers every
yeah,
given night. But when you have Vucevic, you already have that offense instilled. You already have that extra 20-point scorer, 30-point scorer. So you get this defense, you get this spacing and everything. So yeah, this is basically a trade if the Vucevic one happens. For the Pelicans, man, like you talked about the Zion fit, but the Lonzo fit also makes a lot of sense too. Because
yeah,
Kemba Walker
yeah.
is someone who's not going to play make ever. Kind of like that's just not
Mm-hmm.
him. He does get a decent amount of assists, but it's through like easy assists, dump ins, and stuff like that. But man, Lonzo's just gonna have the ball so much more. He's gonna be the true point guard, and Campbell Walker is just gonna light up the screen, like light up the shooting. Like that shooting difference is just gonna be huge from him and Eric Bledsoe.
Mm-hmm.
And he has the confidence to take that last game winners too, because we've seen Brandon Ingram struggle with those game winners in fourth quarter moments. When you have a Campbell Walker in there, it's gonna be a lot easier, and it's gonna really just put everyone less pressure on everyone, and maybe just ease it out for them.
Yeah, 100%. I think, but like this probably doesn't get done unless it's basically just
Vucevic.
replacing Kemba for Vucevic. But I think I just think Vucevic makes more sense on that team than Kemba does.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's go on to the next trade. This one is pretty simple. We all know this is a three-way trade, but it's pretty simple. This has the Heat trading Iguodala and Duncan Robinson to the Magic. The Heat acquiring Victor Oladipo, the Rockets acquiring Aaron Gordon, and giving up that 2023 unprotected Milwaukee first that they got in the PJ Tucker trade.
Yeah, so the Magic instantly accept this because what their asking price for Aaron Gordon is a young player, Duncan Robinson, and a pick, that 2023 Milwaukee pick. Iguodala, just cap filler, just to fill in the contract. For the Heat, you basically get rid of Duncan Robinson and Iguodala for Victor Oladipo. That's pretty much a no-brainer too. They'll accept that. For the Rockets, they're going to be iffy on setting that pick. They're probably going to put a protection in there, maybe like a top 14 lottery protection or something, but it'll probably still be conveyed because Milwaukee's that good.
Mm-hmm.
And just getting Aaron Gordon is such a unique pull to their team because now you have Aaron Gordon, Christian Wood, Kevin Porter Jr. You kind of have that front court of young guys and talented guys to go do something. And then if you get lucky in this draft and get a Cade Cunningham, you're already a young team with a bright future. So this is kind of just to quicken their rebuild and just get that front court set in stone for a Cade Cunningham or for whatever draft basket comes in. So I like it from all three's perspective.
Yeah, so I mean, looking at it from the Heat perspective, it's Iguodala becomes it's a no-brainer because Iguodala is expendable. Acquiring a guy like Trevor Ariza. Trevor Ariza is probably a better Iguodala at this point. You get Victor Oladipo basically just straight up for Duncan Robinson, which is again a no-brainer. Perfect, better defender than Duncan Robinson. He probably allows you to, I don't know, you could play him like even at the guard and the point guard, and then you could play Tyler Hero in closing lineups and stuff. That'd be, I think, like you said, no-brainer. Rockets, you get Aaron Gordon, 2 years left on his deal. Victor Oladipo has made it clear that he does not want to be there, and you get a guy that is going to bring defense to the table right away. Is going to be able to play off of a top draft pick that you get, like you said, Cade Cunningham, Christian Wood. You've got the bones of a great defense there kind of already, even though you're one of the worst teams in the league. So that's, again, a no-brainer. And like you said, Magic, getting a young player like Duncan Robinson, even though they're going to have to extend him if they do decide to keep him, I think is a win. You're not going to pay him like Gordon's making 18.1. I don't think Duncan Robinson is going to make that much. He's going to make
probably like 15, 14.
15, 14. So, I mean, basically just trading an all defense player for an all offense player and a guy that can make their young guard like tandem Fultz and Cole Anthony better. This is kind of a no-brainer on all three sides, I think.
Yeah, and when Jonathan Isaac returns, Duncan Robinson's going to be such a better fit for Jonathan Isaac, Fultz, Vucevic, if they decide to keep him. He just fits that roster better when everyone's healthy. That lottery protected pick from Milwaukee is probably going to be in the 20s and 30s. So the Rockets shouldn't overvalue it. I hope they don't overvalue it because that pick, if that's enough to do it, then it's a big dub for them because Aaron Gordon has so much potential. And when he has a shooting center and a team that's going to value them as their second option, the sky could be the limit for him. He could be a 20 and 10 guy easily.
Yeah, easily. Okay, so let's move on to the next trade. Norman Powell has kind of over the last few days kind of been more and more aggressively in the rumors. His value, I think, is never going to be higher than it is right now with the COVID protocols and basically over the last month since before the All-Star break, he's been averaging like, I don't know, this is a 24, 25 game. He's dropped a career high 40. He's just been amazing. He's never played better than this in his career. And he would be perfect for a team like the Celtics or just another contending team. So this trade basically has the Celtics getting Norman Powell, giving up Aaron Nesmith, Tristan Thompson, and their first this year for the Raptors.
Yeah, if the Celtics get this is a huge dub for them because Aaron Nesmith hasn't really shown anything so far, but he was coming in with a lot of potential. Tristan Thompson, Time Lord plus Grant Williams plus Daniel Tice has kind of made him expendable and him on the go. The first round pick, like, you're gonna make the playoffs. It's gonna be in the 20s. It's not gonna be that good. So yeah, I would do this in a heartbeat if I was the Celtics. If I was the Raptors, it would be tough. It would be tough. Yes, you get a center for right now, which is probably gonna help your team. Yes, you get a young prospect, which can be anything and can be as good as Norman Powell. And you get a pick too, so like it's a decent amount of asset pool, but this is someone that's averaging 20 points this season. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't do it if I was the Raptors. If I was the Celtics, I'd run away with it. If I was the Raptors, I'd be looking for that young centers, which just aren't available.
Mhm.
There's Miles Turners. I'd still be reaching out to them. But if the Raptors feel like, hey, we're not re-signing this guy no matter what, because he is a free agent after this, he has a player option. He's not opting into a 10 million player option. So if they're like, hey man, we just can't re-sign this guy to a 15, 16, $18 million contract extension.
Yep.
With Fred VanVleet already re-signed, with OG re-signed, with Siakam re-signed, with having to re-sign Kyle Lowry, then I can see this being a possibility. It's just I would rather go for a big player, a big name player.
Well, that's the key, I think. The player option, Norman Powell, if we said Duncan Robinson's going to be making 14, 15, Powell could easily make like 17, 18, 19, depending on how the rest of the season goes. So, I mean, getting a guy in Aaron Nesmith who I basically said I thought he was going to be one of the steals of the draft when they got him. He was the best shooter in the draft coming in. I thought he could kind of just be like a Tyler Hero light for the Celtics this year. That hasn't happened, but I mean, I'm still pretty high on him. You get that first round pick. It's not that bad of a package for the Raptors. If you're going to trade Norman Powell, I don't really see too many better packages out there than this. Now, if you're not trading Kyle Lowry and basically saying like we're still trying to compete this year, this probably doesn't make sense. But if you are moving towards that retool, I think this is kind of a pretty decent package for him, though.
So yeah, the key is trading Kyle Lowry. If you trade him, everything makes sense. You're kind of rebuilding. You're rebuilding around the big three of Freddie, OG, Siakam. But the Raptors have been so adamant about not trading Kyle Lowry, so I just don't see them trading Norman Powell for a young prospect and a pick. Like, maybe if they flip this young prospect and a pick for like an Aaron Gordon, then I could see this happening, because that's the Magic's asking price, a young prospect and a pick. But then it just says like, why don't the Celtics go for him instead? And it's just a lot of like, what? And yeah, I do see Norman Powell getting moved, but I see him getting moved for a more established player like a Aaron Gordon, like a Miles Turner, rather than a young player and a pick like Aaron Nesmith and the pick.
All right, so on to the next trade. For some reason, the Dallas Mavericks have kind of shown interest in Kevin Love. I don't understand, but if a trade like that were to happen, I think it would have to look something like Kevin Love to Dallas in exchange for James Johnson and like I guess Tim Hardaway Jr. Be something like that. How do you feel about a type of trade like that for Dallas?
Yeah, the only reason we put this in there is because of that report that said Dallas is interested in him. We hate this trade. Like,
I don't like this trade at all.
Don't trade for Kevin Love. He plays for he plays like 2 games this season and got injured twice.
No, please,
just don't trade for him. Yeah.
He's due 31.2 over the next each year over the next 2 years. So just please don't do this. This is just gonna kill your cap space. That's enough on that anyway. All right, so this one's a little more interesting. Lamarcus Aldridge, the Blazers are kind of one of the suitors for Lamarcus Aldridge. So a trade like Aldridge to the Blazers for Rodney Hood and Derrick Jones Jr., I think makes sense for both sides. I actually kind of like this trade. How do you feel about it?
I think this is kind of just more of a homer trade. Like, get him back to the Trailblazers. I honestly think at this point of their careers, Derrick Jones Jr. is a better fit for a playoff team due to his defense than Lamarcus Aldridge.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wouldn't do this if I was the Trailblazers. If he gets bought out, go and buy him, go and get him. But if he doesn't get bought out, just let him go to one of those teams with a trade exception or with some dead cap. So if he doesn't get bought out, he's probably going to Miami for the Iguodala contract, or he's going to the Celtics for that trade exception. Trailblazers fans, you just gotta wait until he gets bought out. If he doesn't, then you just miss out on him.
To be honest, Portland's defense is so bad. Like, I don't think they're
Yeah.
stopping anyone no matter what. So, I mean, kind of just go all in on offense.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You never know, but
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of Lamarcus Aldridge. I'm not a fan of old guys.
I mean, if you threw Aldridge into like a Miami for basically no assets or
Yeah,
something like that, I think he could actually work really well, or like a Bucks.
yeah,
If you're actually giving up defense and Derrick Jones Jr. for him, Rodney Hood has done almost nothing this year.
nothing. Yeah,
Giving up Derrick Jones Jr., who's all literally averages like 9 points a game or something.
yeah,
He's basically all defense. I don't know how I feel about that too much, but I mean, they're not stopping anyone because their best lineup is
yeah,
Dame, CJ, obviously. Melo, I think, is in their best five. Aldridge would be in
yeah,
their best five. And I guess like maybe Nurkic and Aldridge together would be
yeah. You
probably
never
their
know. You
closing
never
lineup.
know.
That lineup isn't stopping anyone. I don't care if like Kawhi Leonard's in there. That lineup's not stopping anyone. So
Yeah, I think Alame doesn't even start like no matter what because I think it's Dame, CJ, Covington, Melo,
yeah.
Nurkic. I think he's just a good six man. Which honestly, yeah, just pull the trigger. Like I don't know. Like I wouldn't pull the trigger, but I would kind of at the same time.
Yeah, whatever.
It's kind of iffy. Just depends how teams feel about Lamarcus Aldridge.
Yeah. All right. On to the next trade. This trade is kind of amazing for okay, so this is a three-way trade between the Heat, Nets, and Cavaliers. The Nets basically become like by far prohibitive championship favorites, acquiring JaVale McGee, Avery Bradley, and Kendrick Nunn. The Heat acquire Spencer Dinwiddie from them, and then the Cavs just get a second round pick in exchange for JaVale McGee, which is
Yeah,
basically like all you're gonna get for him.
yeah. So basically, the trade is JaVale McGee for a second round pick, which is
Yeah,
pretty good, which I think both the Nets and the Cavs accept. And the trade for the Heat net standpoint is Avery Bradley, Kendrick Nunn for Spencer Dinwiddie, which if you're not going to re-sign Kendrick Nunn, his value is not going to be that high. Spencer Dinwiddie, he sits out a year, he comes back, he's good. Avery Bradley is dispensable now with the
yeah,
addition of Trevor Ariza. So I see all three teams accepting this. I think I think Miami kind of just takes a year back if they do accept this though. I think they're like, hey, Nets win this year. Let's just try next year with this new guy in and everyone coming back together. And the Nets just win a championship if this trade goes down because they just get an amazing backcourt of defenders in Kendrick Nunn and Avery Bradley. They get another center and JaVale McGee. Yeah, they just win the championship if this goes down.
yeah. It's like I wouldn't if this did happen, I wouldn't hate it for the Heat because I mean you are getting Dinwiddie next year, who is an upgrade over Kendrick Nunn. This
Yeah,
this makes you more contenders next year. But like you said, this is basically just punting on this year, just handing this year to the Nets or whatever, just admitting that you're not going to win. I do think they can kind of compete with the Nets, especially defensively. So I don't
yeah,
know if that is necessarily a smart move, but I wouldn't hate it because I think next year a lineup with like Dinwiddie and Bam and Jimmy and Tyler Hero and stuff that would be a much upgraded team over this year. But I mean, I don't
and
know.
and if,
It's just
and
a
if
fun
he
trade.
wasn't hurt, he'll be going for a lot more than this.
Oh yeah,
So I think you're
yeah,
getting him for a steal too. Because you have to
yeah,
remember, this is like it's a guy that averaged 19 and 6. Like
yeah,
he is
yeah,
that good, and I think people are just forgetting. And if you just get him for Kendrick Nunn and Avery Bradley, it's a steal. It's a steal.
yeah, yeah. 100%.
Yeah,
All right, on to the next trade. This trade is the Nuggets upgrading a little bit, trading away a player that I've honestly never heard of. This is the Kings giving up Nemanja Bjelica to the Nuggets in exchange for a guy named Vlatko Kankar. I'm not gonna lie, I've never heard of this guy in my life, but I do
yeah,
like this trade for the Nuggets, getting another guy who can make a three, just a big body, get some boards, just throw some more interesting lineups in there around Jokic.
yeah.
Pretty much for
So
nothing.
this okay. So this is basically a cap trade for the Kings. You kind of get rid of the 7 million. I think the Nuggets waive Flacco Kankar instead of actually trading him. So it's basically just getting rid of him. Maybe a 2027 second round pick gets thrown in. It's just kind of getting your cap contract free. And for the Nuggets point of view, you're just getting a big for to back up Jokic. You kind of lost Mason Plumlee and you didn't really replace him. So this is just getting a big that's more established than Isaiah Harrington and just a better shooter. And you're just replacing the what's it called? The this void left by Mason Plumlee. I thought PJ Tucker was going to be that person, but
Mm.
he's gone now. So Bjelica's the person I think the Nuggets should target to replace the Mason Plumlee role.
Yeah, I mean, he's a shooter. He's a big shooter. That's basically what he is. He's kind of like, I don't know, Davis Bertans, maybe Davis Bertans light. I don't even know if he's that light. But yeah, just an interesting guy to throw around Jokic. Just pretty fun, giving up absolutely nothing for a guy in the last year of his deal. I mean, what's there to lose?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's end this off with the most likely trade out of every trade that we've talked about so far, and that is Andre Drummond finally finding a trade suitor, which is the Bulls, in exchange for Otto Porter in 2 seconds. Now, the 2 seconds, like maybe it's 1 second, maybe it's 2, I don't know, but the only team that can actually kind of match that contract that makes sense is Otto Porter making 28.4 on the last year in exchange for Drummond making 28.7 on his last year.
And both these fits are good for the teams as well, because like they could use another small forward, Cleveland, that just plays defense and just makes a little bit, shoots a little bit, and you get the seconds that you gave up to get Drummond back. So yeah, that makes sense completely from Cleveland's point of view. For the Bulls' point of view, you kind of getting a little frustrated with your center right now. You benched him. You have Thad Young kind of in that role of Otto Porter already. You have Patrick Williams, who's obviously starting. So yeah, I like it both ways. I think they should just be done like right now. Like I don't know what the wait is about. Like let's get this trade done and let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean you're not going to get anything better for like 2 second rounds in exchange for Drummond is the best you're going to get, and getting a player who can actually fit with your team this year and kind of just see what you have in this lineup, I think is just a huge W and needs to happen right now, like you said.
Yeah, steal.
All right, so that does it for this episode. Thank you everyone for listening. That was basically just us predicting and projecting and hoping that trades happen. We're actually going to be recording instead of Sunday. We're going to be recording basically right after the trade deadline on Thursday. So hopefully there's just a bunch of trades that go down at the last minute that we can just talk about and have a good time on Thursday. But until then, thank you everyone for listening to this one. You can find us on Instagram at Stretch the Floor Podcast. Subscribe to us on YouTube at STF Clips, where we post the best 2, 3, 4 minute clips from this podcast. But most importantly, subscribe to the podcast feed on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. Leave a 5-star rating and a review. It really helps with the algorithm. And that's basically it. Thank you guys, and we'll see you on Thursday.